The chair recognizes the honourable member for Fort Charlotte.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I stand once again for and on behalf of the great and proud people of the constituency of Fort Charlotte. Mr. Speaker, I have been very contemplative and prayerful. I've meditated, and I ask God to guide my words and my heart as I speak here today. Mr. Speaker, I give this contribution in honor of the memory of the late Bahamian champion, the Honorable Edmund Moxey, otherwise known as Muscle and Guts. And I start off with the preface of my statement today, and that being that we must at all times acknowledge truth in all that we do. And when we acknowledge truth, all that springs forth can only be good. But when we seek to deceive and to be duplicitous, we do not bring honor to the people we represent, nor do we aid in the march towards a deepening of our democracy and the advancement of our national interests and good. Mr. Speaker, as I wrote and I include as my own words, which they are, I wish to state in a statement issued by myself this past weekend: a nation's constitution is its most authoritative and defining legal document, with which all statute laws must conform in order to be of legal effect. The Constitution is a declarative, aspirational, and protective document. It declares to all what constitutes that nation's core values and beliefs. It outlines the general aspirations of its people, and it protects those core values, beliefs, and aspirations against assault or violation by binding the state, legislators, and the judiciary with respect to what is or is not permissible under the law. Changing a constitution is periodically deemed necessary. However, it is a rare exercise and is of such magnitude that it requires the participation and consent of both the elected and their electors. As a result, I offer the following perspectives for consideration. It was once said by an astute observer of our political system and our politics that there are some with tremendous power in our country, political power, who would literally, who would figuratively rip out your guts and cry at your political funeral. As I said, Mr. Speaker, we must first and foremost acknowledge the truth. And in the honor of that man, that champion, who I recognized earlier, I believe that as a young politician, recently joining the Progressive Liberal Party, and that when I made my maiden speech, I said we should atone for the sins of the past. One great political sin that was committed, Mr. Speaker, was that we politically and financially eviscerated the late Mr. Edmund Moxey because of his views and because he was perceived as a threat. Mr. Speaker, it has relevance to what I say today, because when we stand to our feet and we speak in a fashion that appears to be contrary to that of the party line, there are those who give orders to politically destroy and do damage to that individual for no reason other than the fact that they espouse independent views. Mr. Speaker, I said in this place before and I say it again. What is relevance? I'm not speaking about alcohol as you just spoke of, Member for Carmichael. If I may say, respectfully so, I'm speaking of relevance. But you were allowed to...
Member, address the chair.
Mr. Speaker,
address the chair.
Thank you.
Address the chair.
Mr. Speaker, I hope I'm not, there's no attempt made to shut me down because you don't want to hear what I have to say. And I say that generally, not in reference to you, but by those who may seek to interrupt. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, we were all, as young, aspiring politicians, given an opportunity to offer ourselves for elected office. We were told that we represent a new generation of politicians, people who would cross the bridge laid by the Right Honorable Member for Centerville and carry our people further into the promised land. We were given an opportunity to espouse our independent views. We were told that we could be who we are, that we were people of value who had something to contribute. But when we were elected, and what appears to be something that is consistent with all major political parties, not singling out the PLP, when you go contrary to what the party line is, you are assaulted. Figuratively, and sometimes literally. Mr. Speaker, we should have the ability, when we espouse our independent views, to be given or accorded the respect as being intelligent people who are reflective of the differing points of view that exist in our society. We should not be expected, because we were elected, to walk in lockstep with the views held by the leadership of our party, even if it goes against our personally held views. Are we to be automatons or robots who, when we are elected, we turn our brains off and we do as we are told? Even if the people who elected us wish for us to come in here and articulate their views that run counter to the views of our party. Mr. Speaker?
Member for Fort Charlotte, the chair has to caution you, though. Still, the chair needs you to stick to the question.
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
On the table.
Mr. Speaker, with respect to discriminating against persons on the basis of sex, I've considered what appears to me to be the reality in our society. Discriminating against persons on the basis of sex today seems to be limited to scenarios as follows. A husband beats his wife, or a boyfriend abuses his girlfriend, and the police are called to the scene. Male police officers who refuse to intervene on the basis that how a man decides to assert his strength and control in a relationship is no business of law enforcement. Example number 2. A wife beats her husband, or a girlfriend abuses her boyfriend, and the police are called to the scene. Male police officers who snicker and laugh and refuse to intervene on the basis that a man who allows a woman to beat him is a sissy and deserving of whatever punishment he allows to be inflicted upon him by a woman. Example number 3. A gay man presents to the police station, beaten and battered by his male companion, seeking the intervention of law enforcement, who, on the basis of his sex and that of the abuser, they snicker and laugh and refuse to perform their legal obligation and sworn duty solely because of their personal, their being the police officers, their personal objections. Mr. Speaker, I submit to you that it is a fallacy that in our country we are regressive with respect to empowering women. I give you numerous examples. We currently have the sitting representative head of state, the Governor General, as none other than Dame Marguerite Pindling. We have in the past had an acting Prime Minister, none other than Cynthia Mother Pratt. We have had a Deputy Prime Minister of the same person. We have now the current Deputy Leader of Her Majesty's Loyal Opposition, the Honourable Member for Long Island. We have had a Speaker of the House of Assembly, the sister of the Member for Carmichael. We have had numerous examples of female cabinet ministers, including the current Attorney General. And might I add, we have as a country had more female Attorney Generals than one that is considered to be, if not the most, one of the most progressive countries in this entire world. That is the United States, who, as far as I'm aware, has only had Janet Reno as their Attorney General, having been a female. We have had the head of our judiciary, President of the Court of Appeal, and Chief Justice as females. We have had leaders in the financial arena, and now do in the present, as the governor of the central bank, the head of commercial banks, as females. And we have had leaders and still have leaders in the civil service, numerous examples, who are female. Permanent secretaries, chief medical officers, the Director General of Tourism, the Superintendent of the Insurance Commission, and on and on and on. Mr. Speaker, these were not token appointments, or at least I do not suspect that they were token appointments, based merely on the gravity of their appointments and the fact that they were so numerous in nature. But Mr. Speaker, I took offense earlier when I listened to the member for Central and South Eleuthera who talked about sophistry, who said that there were numerous examples of sophism that were found in arguments being made by members in this place and elsewhere. You see, I understand that we like to use these words that are snide remarks. No, you're making an argument that appears to be correct when in actuality it's false. Sophism. And then you could say, you know, it's a specious argument, one that's very deceptive. It appears to be true, but it's not. And then he degenerated into an ad hominem attack on members who offer differing views, questioning their sexuality. And you see, the reason I mentioned it before.
The member rises on a point of order. The chair recognizes member for Central and South Eleuthera.
I did not write you prior to my speech to give notice of any intent on attacking anyone. And I certainly never named anyone or referred by innuendo or otherwise to any member of this House. And I am surprised that it can now be said, after I have taken my seat, that I was attacking either the member for Fort Charlotte or any other dissenting voice in this House. I certainly never did so, and I'm shocked.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The member spoke on the record that he was not attacking any member in this House.
It's not a problem. But, Mr. Speaker, I understand how our politics works. No, I won't withdraw it because I know what you said, and the record reflects what you said.
Very well. Member for Fort Charlotte, take your seat. Member for Central and South, take your seat. Member for Fort Charlotte, member for Central and South Eleuthera indicated that what he said was not directed at any individual. Because your remarks was in reference to what he said, the chair will oblige you to withdraw the remark.
Mr. Speaker.
Based on what the member said, the member did not say He did not refer to any member here. The member made a general statement. So on that basis,
that's fine. Mr. Speaker,
honorably.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It didn't have to be about me. That's fine. The fact is that he said that. And whomever it was he was referring to is of no concern of mine. The fact is it was an unnecessary statement. It was most inane. It was most asinine. And it was beneath the level of honor that is supposed to be attached to a member of this honorable house. It was a puerile, because he likes big words, it was a puerile argument. Childish, shallow.
Very well. Member,
Mr. Speaker,
your point is made.
Mr.
Continue.
Speaker, the point is this. We don't need to reduce ourselves to making those kinds of attacks on individuals simply because we take a view that differs with that of the leadership of our party. Mr. Speaker, you see, we should not be condescending if we expect to arrive at consensus. Because I have a view that differs from yours, there's no need for you to resort to those kinds of attacks. The member for Central and South Eleuthera is much too smart an individual to have to resort to those things. Either what is being said has merit, as it relates to the arguments we make, or they have no merit. And I would say, Mr. Speaker, that I would not have been as offended as I was sitting here on this side listening to him if he had not last week come here and acknowledged that this does in fact open the door to the concerns expressed by members from Marcos City and others, because he is an intelligent man who understands the ramifications of what it is that we propose. And if we represent the public, they are entitled to know what is the potential of actions taken in this honorable place. And if we don't do it, and we wait for 10 years down the line, and act as though, oh, I didn't know that could have happened, we are no less guilty. Mr. Speaker, I believe, and I say this without fear of contradiction, that if you come into this place and you are told that you either think a certain way or you have no place in our organization, you were merely a token. You were used to achieve a certain objective, and when that objective is achieved, there is no longer any use for you. Mr. Speaker, I often hear, Mr. Speaker, the saying that he is not a true PLP. And the way he talks, he can't be a true PLP. Mr. Speaker, I ask you, sir, what is a true PLP? And if I can't get an acceptable definition, I ask myself, is that a way to cause one to become, to be brought into conformity with what is expected of them? I need to speak. I need to get this off my chest, honorable member for Mount Moriah. Because you see, you know, this, and I love the way the member for Marcos City puts it. When I speak, I don't, he says when he speaks, he doesn't intend to make things personal. But you see, we are of this new generation. We think differently. And the way politics worked in the past is not necessarily the way politics is going to continue to work in the future. And if it is that we take strong views, that we believe the public is entitled to hear, that we suffer consequences, then so be it. But I want to throw something else out there, and let it not ever be misconstrued. I believe in the complete equality between men and women. I believe that I am no more valuable than a woman. Mr. Speaker, I believe so much so that I wonder sometimes if we allow, do we listen to ourselves? Because you see, we make this argument today about how if you hold a particular view, you are anti-women. Upon tomorrow or tonight at midnight to step in as leader of the government, as prime minister, she could do the job. But I gotta make a statement, Mr. Speaker. At the PLP's convention in November, if it is held, if I stand on the floor and I nominate the member for Engliston to become the next leader of the Progressive Liberal Party, I would be standing alone. Because
Member for Fort Charlotte. Member for Fort Charlotte. Speak to the question.
Do you know why I speak to the question, Mr. Speaker? You know why I speak to the question? Because either you believe that women are in fact equal, and that you are so sincere in what you have to say that you can put your money where your mouths are, or all you're doing is engaging in deceptive arguments. And I remember that the member for Engliston was once the chairman of the Progressive Liberal Party, the first one. And I know what happened to her when she offered for re-election. And I'm saying, Mr. Speaker, that if we believe so much in women, how many of us are in here today are prepared as elected members to stand behind a woman that would challenge our male leader? Or, as the member for Marco City said, are we afraid of how it will affect us? And do we do things or not do things on the basis of how we think it will affect us? Mr. Speaker, I would wholeheartedly support a woman being Prime Minister of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas if she so offered herself. If she was able to convince me that she had the views or held the views and had the ability to hold that particular office, she has no less right to that than a male who wished to do the same. But it's more than just saying, hey, we for equal rights according to sex, and then we shut down those persons on the basis of sex when opportunities to demonstrate our commitment to that particular cause are readily available. Mr. Speaker, as it relates to Bill number 2, I do not believe that anyone upon marriage should have the automatic entitlement to citizenship, notwithstanding that there are provisions in place on the basis of confirming that the marriage continues to subsist or that the person is not guilty of some egregious act of moral turpitude or whatever the case may be. The fact is you have an entitlement to that. In contrast to a person born in this country to foreign parents, they have 18 years to be in this country, to become assimilated or integrated into this society. 18 years, sir. We are taking a risk that we open up Pandora's box, notwithstanding the fact that we say that there are policies on the books now that guard against it. The fact of the matter is, why potentially open up Pandora's box if we don't have to? Or why not alter the wording so that you're not entitled to citizenship, but you're entitled to the right to apply, which obviously some would argue is not necessary. Mr. Speaker, I speak of a young lady, a Bahamian lady, who's married a foreigner. And I won't say which country that foreign male descends from, because I don't want to generalize the men of that country or attribute any disparaging behavior to all the men of that country. But this young lady fell in love with this man who's of foreign heritage, who's from another country. And she had children with this man. Never in her wildest dreams did she think that that man did not love her the way she loved him. Until he got his permanent residency, Mr. Speaker, she saw a different side of him. And he began to disrespect her by flaunting his escapades in her face, bringing other women to the house. She got angry, as one would expect, because she holds sacred the view that marriage should not be subject to infidelity. She took exception with what was going on. She questioned him. He responded violently. He struck her, and when she was on the ground, he kicked her in her stomach. And he told her, "Do you think that I could ever love you?" Referring to her size. Mr. Speaker, let no one ever be able to say that I do not wholeheartedly and completely and there's no exception whatsoever. I love my Bahamian women. Bahamian women have tremendous influence and power in this country. So I would never willfully do anything to insult their intelligence or cause them to think that I do not believe that they are entitled to equal rights to that, of those afforded to Bahamian men. But there's another side to it. Why would you want to give something to someone that you cannot take away? That could very quickly alter the dynamics of your society. Assimilation is a very serious thing. And if you don't have assimilation or integration, you become one country with a nation under which or within which multiple countries exist. You can have a Bahamas with multiple other countries within the confines of its borders. Why? Because you're not sensitive to the fact that decisions that you make may not allow for the reasonable integration of a people that are invited into your country who are not born there. And I don't believe that we should hastily make any decisions that could have such negative ramifications. Mr. Speaker, I spoke to Ms. Erin Green outside of this place shortly before coming back for the afternoon session, and I told her that I will fight in here or anywhere else for her right to espouse whatever views she has. Unlike any other Bahamian, I love her. And I believe that she should not be stifled in her ability to feel however she wishes to feel, to promote whatever she wishes to promote. But it does not mean that I have to agree with everything that she says. And I believe, consistent with the findings of the Constitutional Commission, that the vast majority of Bahamians believe that marriage is the union between one man and one woman. And consistent with the recommendations of the Constitutional Commission, I believe that language should be introduced to the Constitution that enshrines or entrenches that view. And if we don't do it, I believe that because the country has lost confidence in us as politicians, especially listening to all of the animosity that exists following the gaming referendum, I believe that we should reassure the public that there is no hidden agenda. And if you can't put language in place in this exercise that gives that reassurance, I cannot fault the Bahamian people for doubting the sincerity of my words or the words of any other politician in here. Because right now we suffer from a deficit of trust. The same thing that allowed the former member for North Abaco to ride back into power was this perception that there was no trust between the public and the politicians. They said it was a matter of trust. My point, Mr. Speaker, is that we must ensure that we do nothing that causes the Bahamian people to lose trust in their government. Mr. Speaker, I believe that what I've said here today is my duty to offer differing views that exist within my constituency. And if it is that I am offensive, if it is that there are persons who object with what I have said, I am prepared, Mr. Speaker, to suffer those consequences. Now, Mr. Speaker, having said that, I fully expect that if this is taken to a vote as it is today, I can no longer, and I am prepared to no longer serve as government whip. Because if the government expects that it has the unanimous support of this side being the government side, and I cannot accede to those wishes, I am prepared to step aside. That would be the right thing to do. But if the government is prepared to reconsider in a way that I believe is in concert with the wishes of the public, then obviously there would be no reason for me to have to do that. Having said that, in closing, I thank the Constitutional Commission, led by Mr. Sean McQueenie and Justice Nottage, among others. I thank them for all that they did in trying to put forth the recommendations and the views of the public, bringing us to this point here today. And I'm only hopeful that we would continue to serve the interests of our people, to do the best that we can, to represent their views in this place as we promote the interests of the people of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. I thank you.